Hello everyone and welcome to the latest devlog for Vengeful Rites, virtual reality RPG. My name's Anthony and today I'd like to talk to you guys about a few of the key features coming in with today's patch that have a pretty significant impact on the way the game is played. Namely, those would be improvements to the enemy AI, ultimate perks becoming accessible for the first time, and the new difficulty setting that we've added to the game. Now, each of these is pretty significant in their own right, but probably the most important one I guess would be the difficulty setting, but ultimate perks are probably more exciting, so why don't we start talking with that? So anyone who's played the game so far is familiar with the way the perks work, which is you'll find elixirs as you're on your adventure, and consuming them gives you a perk point which you can spend, and if you decide to go down one of the three sort of disciplines of combat, which are melee, magic, and archery, then you can increase your viability with those disciplines and eventually unlock an ultimate perk in that discipline, which for melee, for example, would be the ability to dual wield instead of being stuck using only one sword. Now I'll demonstrate this. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's very significant in what it accomplishes for you. And that is, one, it allows you to basically double your damage output. You feel really cool while doing it. Side bonus, it's a bit of a workout. And three is that I forgot what my third point was. Oh, you can parry more easily. You pretty much always have one hand available to block if you get a certain rhythm going. So you can attack and defend at the same time, basically, which I don't think anything more needs to be said about that. It's obviously, pretty game-changing as far as your viability in combat. But then there are also the archery and magic perks, which for archery is actually kind of both. And the way that works is that using your bow, if you have the ultimate perk unlocked, you can now summon your magic wheel and then imbue your bow with those types of magic. So for example, let's go with kinesis to demonstrate this. You see, if you have something selected, your arrow sort of glows the color of the magic school that's selected to tell you what you're doing. And for kinesis, for example, this will basically work as an aim assist, and none of this costs mana. This is just something that happens to your arrows. They're pretty balanced, but they're very useful. So you can see, for example, I don't know if you can tell, I can tell that I'm missing this guy right now. I'm shooting a little bit to his right, but if I let that go, apparently I shot it too high also, and I continue to do that. My mistake. Oh, hold on a minute. That's okay. That's my mistake. I'll get into that in a second. But you can see I'm shooting a little bit to the right, and I caught him. Oh, and I knocked him down. And then that caught him too. Let's see if I can get this guy. You can see I'm shooting to the side, but it basically homes in on them and will attempt to shoot them in the head. So if you can, you'll be able to get headshots much more easily. And what was actually happening there when I was missing those first few shots, a little bit of a spoiler, give you some insight into what's coming in Chapter 3. One of the new rings you can get is this ring called a True Shot ring, which outright eliminates the pull of gravity on your arrows. So you can just shoot in a perfectly straight line. You don't have to worry about trying to get the arc right and figure out where they're going to be so it'll drop onto them. You can just shoot straight, and obviously, I think it goes without saying, if you combine that with the kinesis arrow, let me give you a demonstration of it, it makes archery, from long range especially, much easier, and can almost guarantee a headshot. I shot it too high. It's actually kind of hard shooting straight. Oh my god. Oh my god. Did not expect that. Okay. This one's gonna work. I feel good about this, because this guy's got no idea that it's coming. I'm terrible. I'm so much worse at this than I used to be. Here we go. Absolutely domed him. Domed him. There you go. 3 headshots back to back. That one doesn't count. That dude was ducking a little too much, if I'm being honest. That seemed excessive to me, but, it do be like that sometimes. But you can see if they don't know that you're there, and if you can get a stealth shot on them, it makes it pretty close to a guaranteed headshot, and you could snipe guys from pretty far away. Come here. The other ultimate, which there are, obviously, you have different things here. I guess I'll go into each one a little bit. That's the homing arrow, like I said. The restoration one is a lifesteal, so when you hit an enemy, you'll get back some of the damage you deal as health. Destruction will set them on fire, guaranteed, or if you miss them and you just hit the ground, it'll do a little explosion like you can see here, and that'll deal a little bit of damage. It's not as strong as a fireball, for example, but it'll do a little bit of damage to any enemy around it and potentially set them on fire. So you still want to hit them with it, but if you can't, that's useful in its own way also. And then the protection one will do a debuff on the enemies that reduces their natural armor, so they'll take additional damage. So a great way to start a fight, instead of me just saying it, why don't I demonstrate it, would be to hit them with the protection arrow to begin with, which I already have selected, to lower their natural defense. Oh my god, well, it doesn't matter now because he's basically done. But you can see, that was the lifesteal. I'm full health, so I didn't get anything back, but that's how that would work. And you can see it's a very quick thing to switch however you want to do it. And I missed the homing arrows for that. There you go. That, game changer, clearly. Don't duck. Can you stop? Alright. And it may not go without saying, but normally you wouldn't be able to have both of these. So, like, I'm dual wielding and I have the archery one. I also have the magic ultimate. That's not something you'll be able to do in the game. You'll only be able to unlock one by the end of the game, although you will have additional perks that you can put in the other trees. So the idea is, it takes 7 perks to get an ultimate perk, and then you'll be able to get 6 more if you find all of them. So you'll be able to get just shy of the ultimate perk in another tree if that's the way you choose to go. So if you want to get all of your mana reduction and regen rates up, but be a dual wielding person, you can do that, or any combination thereof. The last one, swap that out, is magic. So the way that the magic ultimates work is you learn two-handed spells, which I'll demonstrate here, and which is basically just the gesture is two-handed. You don't have to have 2 hands free, so you can use the scepter if you'd like to. You just have to be able to perform the gesture with both hands, and that gesture is to bring them together, squeeze the trigger just in the one hand, the one that has the school that you would like to use. So you can see I have destruction in my right hand, protection in my left. If I squeeze with my left hand, it's a protection one. If I squeeze with my right, it's a destruction, and you can do it however you like. But these are game-changing spells, basically. So the destruction one is a huge AoE explosion that does a lot of damage to enemies around you, which is affected by the shrines that you light, so they get stronger throughout the course of the game. You can use a scepter, like I said, so you could potentially cast these for free if your luck is good. And the destruction one also guarantees that enemies catch fire. Then you have the same with the way the magic generally works. So you have your protection one, which I think is probably the most game-changing one. It's hard to say which would have the biggest impact, but protection gives you illusory armor. So if you're familiar with the game, you have your illusory shield that you can use to block incoming damage, but if you use the ultimate, you get illusory armor, which is this bad boy right here. So this, I don't have to block at all, and you can see it's absorbing the damage that I would be absorbing, and counting as a parry toward the enemy. So right now, I can't take damage, and this will work for 30 seconds or 200 damage. You can see he just dealt 200 damage to me, so it consumed it, but that's a big deal. And then we've also got the, that was the restoration one, which is an AoE lifesteal. For every enemy around you, it'll deal some damage to them and steal that life immediately. And destruction. Giant thing, you saw it hit him for 150, basically it would have one-shot him, in fact. And if it didn't, he would have caught fire, guaranteed. So on and so forth. And then the Kinesis one, which I do not have the mana for currently. Do I have a potion, maybe? This will do just a giant kinetic AoE pulse, kind of like your kinetic thrust, except in all directions and stronger, more likely to knock enemies down, and just generally better. So that's the ultimate perks, which, as I said, are pretty game-changing. Then there is some, let's demonstrate this, some improvements have been made to the AI. So for example, you'll see I'll try to kite this guy. That's the first one. They can lunge at you now, which is significant. So they're much less likely to be kited. It makes that a lot harder. And then there's a few other ones. I'll get dodged. There's a few other things, a few other improvements to them, but that's probably the biggest one. And for archers, though, you pretty much can't break them anymore. Anyone who's fought an archer before, you may know that you could sort of step in and out and get them to switch back and forth between aiming their bow at you and trying to stab you with their arrow, and you could potentially get them to never attack you at all if you're getting your timing right, and that's no longer possible. They're always going to shoot once they've knocked the arrow to their bows, so you can't cheese them out that way. But there are some more significant changes. So currently you can see there's this difficulty meter that has been added to the game, or this difficulty setting I should say, and I'm on Apprentice right now, which is basically what the game has been up until now. This has been the default difficulty setting, and you can see enemies are a little bit smarter, they do a little bit more, like I was just saying, but there are new settings that you can go with also. So for example, if I go to the novice setting, and let's reload the scene there, you'll see that enemies are a bit dumber now. They take more damage by default, they deal less damage by default. Hey buddy. You can see, so this guy now, he'll never lunge at me. He doesn't have that in his repertoire on the easiest difficulty, so it's a bit easier to kite them. Like I said, they deal less damage, so let's see. Oh, he didn't deal any damage. Or basically none. You can see I can take a lot more hits, although I have a little bit more than the starting health right now. But, yeah, they're just generally dumber. Also, your damage is increased, so if you saw before, I was hitting for maybe 55 or so on an enemy. Let's see. 66, 62, 63. So he got pretty easily murdered, and it's so... I understand I'm rambling, I apologize for that. The actual numbers of it are, they'll deal 25% less damage, and they'll receive 25% more damage. So it makes things a bit easier for you. Enemies are easier to manage, and, you know, generally just makes the game a bit more accessible. Oh, there's a few other things, like enemies, when you parry them, are more likely to be staggered by the parry instead of chaining it into another attack. So you can see he got staggered right on the first one. And a couple of other small things, but it adds up to being a pretty major difference. It makes the game much easier, I think. But what I'm actually more excited about, and what I've been testing on lately and having a really fun time with, is if you put it on Master difficulty, which is the hardest difficulty. And that makes some pretty significant changes to it. So for example, demonstrate on your boy over here, enemies on Master difficulty, 1, they will lunge at you, 2, they'll never slow down their movement, and 3, they'll attack, they'll continue moving forward while attacking. So it makes it much more difficult, especially depending on the enemy and their speed, to try to step in and out and avoid their damage. You can also see he's much more aggressive. It takes a lot longer for me to parry him, or not for me to parry, but for him to become staggered by a parry. And they hit much harder. Their damage is just completely doubled. So if you're fighting an enemy or multiple enemies, like let's see, I'm actually a little worried about this, because I've died to a similar combination already. These skeletons are brutal. I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Woo. Alright. Lifesteal sword. Lifesteal sword saved me there. But if you're fighting 2 of those skeleton guys, not a skeleton and a goblin, that's really hard. You're going to have to either be great at the combat, or you're going to have to pick them off early, maybe using your magic to knock somebody down or try to kill them with fire, or pick one of them off with an arrow beforehand. But it makes it very difficult to fight 2 of them at a time. It's actually the way I prefer playing the game right now. Super challenging. I've almost never died up until now while testing the game, and with the Master difficulty I've died a handful of times just in the one playthrough that I've done so far, and not intentionally. I was trying to survive and I failed because I got a little bit arrogant, and I was like, oh, I could probably handle this, but I could not. So if you're someone who's played the game, you feel very comfortable with it, and you feel like you could do with a little more challenge, that option is there now. If you feel like the game is a little bit too difficult or a little too intense, you can go down to the normal the novice difficulty, which is basically easy mode. And if you like it the way it is, you can just keep it on normal mode and cater it to your needs, which is also great for replayability, right? You could try your different builds and your different difficulty levels in subsequent playthroughs. But I'm sure I rambled for much too long in this one. It's probably like a 15-minute video. I'm going to leave it there for now, guys. As always, if you want to see more, you can subscribe to the channel to see more devlogs, join our Discord to talk about the game, share your insight and your thoughts about it. We love hearing people's feedback. It helps us make the game a lot better. And that's going to do it for now. See you next time, guys. Bye.